You know, I started to tell you before about this stress project and these industrial psychologists looking at the department back in 1978, 79. And one of the things that they were looking at was the culture of the department. And obviously they were looking at certainly consequences of behavior, sometimes terrible consequences. Consequences as they saw it of stress. One of the things that they looked at was there was a lot of drinking in the job. There was a lot of drinking after work. You know, LAPD used to call it choir practice. But there was a lot of drinking on the job. I mean, we drank on the job. Bosses drank on the job. So a lot of things were overlooked in this when I was a young cop in the 60s that are not tolerated today. The culture of the department has changed dramatically. I mean, I can remember at times, you know, going out, getting in a radio car with guys, and the guys that have a 6-pack of beer or 12 cans, bring them with them on for a tour. That has all changed since I was in. So there was a lot of enabling going on in those days. I personally would like to think that I shared to some degree in the years that I was there in changing that in the intervention process alone. After one of these presentations to the executive level people, about 2 or 3 days later, I got a captain is referred to my office, police captain, commanding officer of a precinct, is intervened upon by one of the chiefs who was sitting into the presentation that I gave. Now that would never happen at one time, you know, going back in the 60s, never, ever happened. And the sad feature is, a lot of times sometimes guys would lose their life. I'll give you an example of enabling. I'm in the unit. I'm new head of the unit. I'm, 1980, 81. You get a referral from a surgeon's office, which was also very rare. Police officers are going sick, absenteeism, and they have to go to a surgeon. You have to go to the police surgeon in order to be cleared to come back to work. Now, a lot of times you might be seeing guys in the early days who alcoholism is what's going on, and the consequences is physical deterioration, or they're going sick because of hangovers and they can't go to work. They have gastrointestinal problems, virus, diarrhea, those kinds of things. Those are the diagnoses. So they go to a surgeon. The surgeon just overlooks them, unless it's so bad, chronic stage stuff, that the guy can't function. And that's what happens one day. We get a call from a police surgeon. They send over a young cop. They send over an old timer who happens to be, his job in the precinct is the broom, which means he doesn't go out on patrol. He has his gun, but he's a sweeper and he mops the floors. And he can't go out on patrol because he's a chronic stage alcoholic. And he's in Queens, people are just ignoring the problem and whatever. So he gets sent over to us. And the next thing we do is we put him in detoxification, Brunswick Hospital. He goes there to detox. And one of his problems was that he couldn't hear. That's the reason he went to the surgeon in the first place. He couldn't hear. The surgeon took a look in his ears. He's impacted with wax, but he's also an alcoholic. So he winds up in detox, and in the detox procedure, all he can do is they don't lavage his ears in the facility. So his process through detox is by reading. He's either reading or he's writing stuff. His 16-year-old daughter writes him a letter. It's a poem. It's called My Dad, and it's about her dad being an alcoholic. And apparently what happened was the intervention that took place in the hospital that turned this guy's life around was this girl's letter about my dad, okay? One of the first things he wanted to do when he got out of the detox, which was 5 days, was to get his ears lavaged, and then he was going to go up to Veritas Villa for detox. So that takes place. He gets transferred up to the hospital, up to Veritas Villa, and I don't know how long he was there, but I get a call early one morning at home from Jim Cusack telling me that he died. The fellow died up in the rehab. Apparently he had a heart attack, dropped dead in the kitchen. by the coffee pot. And there was a nurse and a dentist there, and they tried to revive him and they couldn't. And I had to go to his home and break this news to his wife, myself and a chaplain. And all the wife said to me was, can you get the letter that my daughter Linda wrote for her father? I said, well, where is it? She said, he left it in the detox hospital in Brunswick. So one of the counselors went over there and got the letter for him. I used to use that letter in part of my presentations about not enabling guys who needed help and how it's intervene early on. And that was part of my educational process to bosses in the job. And I would read that letter to them to have an emotional impact. So in the 60s and 70s and maybe even early 80s, the culture of the job, which was the culture of secrecy, the blue wall of secrecy and enabling people to drink, that changed. As societally, it also did in the police department. But I think the intervention programs, the workplace intervention programs, our program was critical in helping to convince people on the sending end to trust, to be willing to take that chance, to confront somebody when they saw behavior that was unacceptable in relation to the job, when the performance was unacceptable. Whether or not it's related to alcoholism or not is really, in effect, not their business, although they would know. And then send that person for help. And do it not only for the benefit of the department, to save money for the job, but to save a life. So, and I would hammer away at that. I would always make those presentations all the time. It became such an important part of my work, was education. So you asked about, how do you change the culture of an organization? I think there are several factors. I think it's the person who's running the show. I think the leadership or the leader involved there. I think having his connection with the top of the organization or the corporation. If it's a labor management focus, having that connection with labor, having their input there. Because they continually funded us and did more than we asked for. I never was refused any money from the union aspect in terms of money, anything we needed. And then the last piece of all, I think, is education, reconditioning. People have, locked into a way of thinking, become rigid in it, and based on their own experiences or the nature of the beast in the police department, which was, I think there was more secrecy there because the job jeopardy was greater. If you get fired from the PD, as a guy said to me one time in early recovery, and I was complaining to him about, I'm going to lose my job. They're going to fire me, I keep saying. They're going to fire me. He was my sponsor. And he said, Jimmy, don't worry about it. I had 40 jobs. But it wasn't the same as a cop being fired for behavior in relation to alcoholism, that kind of stuff. So